Ben Wehage for Oregon State Athletic Director.
Yes.
Everyone is getting new uniforms. Everyone's getting new uniforms. We're rebranding.
Yeah. And vending machines in the dugouts.
Vending machines in the dugouts. No band, just awesome music. And everyone will hate me instantly.
Yes, and you're fine with that.
Make every game day a theme day. These are just ideas. These are just the tip of the iceberg ideas, folks.
Yeah, we want to hear from you, though, Beaver Nation. What do you want to see athletic director candidate Benjamin Lawrence Sebastian Wehage bring to Beaver Nation? Let us know after what episode are we on? Episode 206? What is that?
I would treat it like a democracy where I would just put up Twitter polls of, do you want to do this or do you want to do that?
That's like how Elon runs a democracy.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, maybe I don't want to do that. But I would actually hold true to them.
What you need to do is put a poll up on like an Instagram like reel or story. You need to put one up on Facebook. You need to put one up on Red Note. You need to put one up on X.
Yep.
And I don't know what else there is. Snapchat, Blue Sky, of course, Blue Sky. Do they have polls on Blue Sky? I hope they do.
Can't do a poll on Sora anymore.
Oh, dude, I've been on a Sora kick.
Really?
The last like 24 hours trying Sora, but everything is getting content blocked. I'm so pissed.
Dude, that was the big thing is everything got content blocked on Sora. Yeah. You had to rewrite your prompts in such a particular way.
And you would wait like 10 minutes to find out that it was blocked.
Yeah.
And you're like, I could have made like 7 more prompts by this point if you would have just let me run free. Come on, Sam Altman, let me run free.
Dude, I was listening to a podcast today, totally separate from Oregon State sports. I was listening to a podcast today about like the rivalries in the AI world in Silicon Valley. Sam Altman is like a psychopath, man. He is such a crazy person that is so unliked amongst everyone in the AI world. I didn't realize that. He seems like such a pushover, but he's not.
No, he's an odd one.
He's an odd one.
That's how they get rich, though. That's how they get rich.
Yeah.
That's what we got to do.
Yeah. Let's
just be weird.
Let's super awkward in interviews.
Yeah.
Yeah.
First interview, Scott Barnes.
Scott Barnes. Yeah. That one would not be, well, that one would be awkward for him. It would be uncomfortable for him.
But it would be even more uncomfortable if we were weird.
It would be our theme night where our theme would be Sam Altman.
Everybody shows up to Reeser as Sam Altman clones. It's like the real Slim Shady at the VMAs.
That would be a good theme night. The real Slim Shady night.
Oh, that would be so good. I would show up. I'd be there.
Yeah, you'd bleach your hair again. I'd bleach my hair.
Not again.
I did. I had my hair bleached for a long time, like 7th, 8th grade, freshman year in high school.
So like 30 years ago.
30 years ago, my face, the paleness of my face was embellished even more with it wasn't even blonde hair. It was just white hair. I bleached it so hard. It was,
I love it.
Yeah. Good luck.
Well, as anyone listening here can see, there's no Terry tonight. It is Benny, you could say where he is and what time of day it is.
Yeah, he's in Ireland, and it's the top of the morning over there. I think it's 4:30 in the morning. Terry is 100% asleep. There's no way he's not drinking a Guinness every night there. Or 5
at
or
least
10.
Yeah, at least one a night, maybe one for breakfast. At least one for breakfast. As he should, as one Irishman should.
Yes.
In Ireland. And I think it's kind of funny because all of the other big breaking news, one of us has always been gone.
Yep.
Every single time.
Yep.
And it was his turn.
It was his turn. Have I been gone for a big breaking news? I know yours is the biggest.
Well, thanks. Well, you were gone. I guess it wasn't big breaking news. We fired Mark Banker. Was that what it was?
Oh, I came in late.
No, who we fired?
It was who? It was Tibazar.
Tibazar, yes.
Yeah,
that was a Banker.
Yeah, because I was in Boulder watching. I was at the game and got in super late. Yeah.
And we had Brian Finley on the show that night.
That was Brian Finley.
Yeah.
I thought it was Yogi Roth, but no, it was Brian Finley.
Yeah, Finley knows. That's what it was. That was the slogan.
Yeah.
He didn't know a lot. He was good.
He was super knowledgeable.
I missed that guy.
Yeah. What's he doing lately? I haven't been keeping up with him.
He was doing some golf stuff, tennis stuff, volleyball stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. But I missed it. He has a good radio voice. He's a good podcast voice.
He has a great radio voice. Him and Yogi Roth both do.
Yeah. What's Yogi's like with the Big Ten now or something?
Is he?
I think.
Yeah. He went to Pitt, right? I always thought he went to USC, but he coached at USC.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, I think you're right. I think he's with the Big Ten.
Wasn't he roommates with like Larry Fitzgerald or something a bit?
Oh, was he?
I think so.
That's funny. I bet he'd be a cool roommate. He seems like a down-to-earth guy. As down-to-earth as you could be as a wide receiver in the NFL.
Larry Fitzgerald or Yogi Roth? Yogi Roth, I don't know if he had a sniff of the NFL.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't think so. Larry Fitzgerald seems like he would be a down-to-earth guy. Is that what Yogi Roth played, was wide receiver?
Yeah.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah.
He seems short to be a receiver, but I guess, hey. Mike Hass.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I wonder what Mike Hass thinks about everything at Oregon State right now.
I don't know, man. I wonder what a lot of those former players think that were like on teams that were, I mean, even just a couple years ago, top 10 team in the nation. Mm-hmm. And just a couple years later, like where we're at right now, I hope they still rep Oregon State and they're not embarrassed about it. I bet they do.
Yeah, well, I won't blame them. But hopefully they're not as embarrassed now that today, March 26th, 2026, 32626. I don't know. I like patterns. That one doesn't really have one. I guess it kind of does. 3 times 2 is 6. And then 2 6. I don't know. But that one's just forget the year. Forget the year. 3 times 2 is 6. 326. It makes sense. And it makes sense that today is the day that James Crapia of the Oregonian, subscribe to your local newspaper, folks, breaks the news that Scott Barnes is stepping down as athletic director at Oregon State and now updated to be effective, I think, August 1st or one of those days.
Before
something in August.
Yeah.
Before the football season. Great timing. Tomorrow is the last day, I believe, to renew your season tickets for football. So if you're hearing this on March 27th and this is your reminder, go renew. Now you have no reason not to.
Yep.
Benny, where were you when you heard the news?
I was at an ultrasound when I heard the news. So it was a great day for me. Yeah, man. I think it was obviously it was time for him to go. We have been calling for it. I think a lot of people in the Beaver fam have been calling for it. It was a sight for sore eyes, for sure.
Yes, I agree. And I think that's part of this that maybe shouldn't go unspoken is like nobody is, and we talked about it maybe Terry and I did last episode, but like nobody's downplaying the accomplishments that Scott Barnes had throughout his tenure at Oregon State. I wouldn't say it was full of them. Most of this now has just been turmoil, whether by his hand or not. He's been the lead on an athletic department that has been facing a pile of shit for nearly half of the time he was the athletic director, and some of it was shit he shoveled into that pile. But he did a lot, right? I mean, he's done a lot with the facility. He was able to tear down and rebuild the old side of Reeser.
Mm-hmm.
He somewhat navigated this conference realignment chaos and kept us where we were, which to some is a good thing, to others not so much. I think there's arguments for both sides that are understandable.
Agreed.
I think the game passed him up.
I think that's fair.
I think it did a long time ago.
I think that's 100% fair. And unfortunately, like sometimes when you make a big mistake, it's the stuff that you did that was good gets overlooked. And you're remembered for that mistake. And I think with Scott Barnes, a lot of it will depend on how NIL plays out for Oregon State. But Scott Barnes has built a foundation, at least, that could really, really hurt that part of Oregon State's athletic department. As we all know, that is a massive, maybe the biggest part of an athletic department right now. And yes, sometimes when you shit the bed, like that's what you're remembered for. And the good stuff is going to be lost and forgotten, I think, is what his sort of legacy is going to be at Oregon State.
Yeah. And also, like, I mean, it was you and I on a show in September when you pulled up the article as we first were like lightly questioning what is up with Blueprint. What was that? The whole thing was announced a month ago. Heard nothing since. Who are they? It's weird that Brent Blaylock and Rob Sine are the only people talking about this thing, and it's been silenced ever since that press release. And you pulled up the article about, was it UNR?
Yeah.
And their cut was like 40% or something then. And we were like, oh, if they're giving Blueprint 40%, that's ridiculous.
Yeah.
Like, that is ridiculous. And that's when we started asking questions. Mm-hmm. And I think when you start to have people look into your mistakes, when they're that big, it's going to overshadow everything you accomplished. Mm-hmm. Everything. When it comes to the long-term memory that will sustain within fans for years and decades, it's that stain. And that's why we looked into it. Literally, because we were like, well, what are the terms? What are we paying them? If we're paying them that, we're going to be pissed. Mm-hmm. Like, if that's their rate, why did we pick them? And actually, it was a better rate. It was a better rate than we got.
Yep.
And we were mad about UNR.
Yep. We're shocked.
Shocked. Because our only question originally was like, what does this mean for Damnation? What does it mean for Kyle? Like, is this a good thing? Like, supposedly these guys know what they're doing. They're like an NIL collective umbrella company. Mm-hmm. So no one was answering us. And that's what led us down a very long 6-month almost path of digging for answers. And I think this is maybe what will be what Scott Barnes is remembered for the most, is not the Blueprint deal, not the fiasco of its fallout, not Trent Bray, not Reeser getting expanded and rebuilt, I guess, and not expanded. Like, none of those things. It's the overarching theme that there were always question marks. There was always a void. There was always a lack of communication from his department in order to keep fans feeling confident and comfortable with the direction he was taking the university. And that blunder exposed his inability to communicate well to fans. And it all spiraled. All of it spiraled from there.
Yep. And I think, I was thinking about this a lot after I saw the news of sort of what you were alluding to, like what transpired and what sort of built the situation. Obviously, like the reporting that you did, the records you're able to get, obviously is the basis of that. But I also think that this came at the worst possible time for Blaylock and Barnes, because I think, like, taking a step back, I think the palpability of the public for corruption of any sort, I think that there is the idea, generally speaking, in sort of the ethos, that there are backroom deals going on, and people that are in charge of whether it's Oregon State sports or AI or whatever are taking advantage of the everyday person. I think that there is sort of that sentiment that's out there right now, just in general. And I think what you're reporting,
fair.
I think it's totally fair. And I think in this case, there were elements of that sort of backroom deal, shady deals going on, deals that maybe weren't in the best interest of us, the fans, and the athletic department as a whole. And I think that came to a head where people felt so offended and so personally affected by this that it didn't take a lot to stoke that fire. And I think you add on top of that Oregon State has just been absolutely shit on as a program for the last 2 or 3 years. Like, this was the match that lit the fire that was doused in kerosene, right? And, how culpable was Scott Barnes? I think it's fair to say that he was culpable because he was the one in charge of the athletic department.
But also his deflection saying that, like, this was, Brent's thing and that he was the one leading the charge. And that's, ultimately put the blame on him before using that blame to let him walk.
For sure.
The files show that's not true. Like, they show point blank that he was very much involved in every decision and every step of the process.
Yep.
And was using Blaylock as a human shield when shit hit the fan.
Yeah, and that even further exacerbates that idea of that sort of shadiness and manipulation of what's going on, where my expectation as someone who's in charge of the athletic department is the buck stops with you and you take accountability. And when you are pushing the blame on somebody and then kicking them out the door, that's not a good look, even if what you're saying is true, right? And I think that certainly hurt his sort of general case to the public that he deserved to continue his job as athletic director at Oregon State. But yeah, I think he played the hand that he was dealt, that he created, in the worst way possible. Like, every single decision he made, every sort of PR he put out or appearance he made just dug his hole even deeper and deeper and deeper. And this, in my opinion, was the only way that it was going to end. And that was pretty evident early on.
Yeah.
That the only way this ends is that he either steps down or gets fired. And I think you could make the argument that it probably wasn't his decision, but it was made to seem like it was his decision. So yeah,
but let's look into that. Let's talk about that. About it being his decision. So the Oregonian's article that broke the story of his announcement claims that Murphy is quoted saying that Barnes initiated these discussions around retirement in August of 2025. Now, that's for everyone who's trying to recap all of the shit that's gone on since summertime. August of 2025 was the same month that OSU announced the Blueprint deal. Scott
and
Barnes
right
is
before
on there
you started
it
looking
all.
into it. Yep.
Right before you and I started to be like, oh, that doesn't sound good. Right before we started to request the records. Right before Daniel Libbett's article on Sportico.com came out with the record of the contract agreement and the breakdown of the payment between Blueprint Sports and Oregon State. That's before any of this became public. But yet they put out a press release. His name is all over it. His quotes are all over it. There's no mention of anything about him being potentially like on the way out. There's no insinuation even that like, hey, we're putting Oregon State in a perfect landing spot. We're ready to go into the future, no matter who's at the helm, right? Like it was like it was his baby from that point onward, but yet somehow he was already planning to retire. Then I guess that supposedly it says how they shelved those conversations for a while, and they picked up in the new year. Which, look at this from like a high level. August, all the chaos starts to come raining down on the athletic department post blueprint unwinding, or even pre-unwinding. At that point, pretty much he fires Trent Bray, lets Brent Blaylock walk away. By all accounts, it was going to be a termination, who, at least as of last month, again, by the way, is still on the payroll at Oregon State. He hires a new head football coach, kinda. It was the committee, but also he's the athletic director when the hiring occurred. Mm-hmm. Then he fires Wayne Tinkle with a game left in the regular season after winning 6 of 8 or 7 of 8 or something like that. Mm-hmm. And then he also hires a new men's head basketball coach. Mm-hmm. And a week later announces he's retiring. And it wasn't something that was just spur of the moment. He'd been thinking about it through all of that, considering it through all of that. And that drives me nuts.
Yeah. Yeah.
Also, in that article, it is alluded to, if not directly claimed, that Joyner, the attribution of the quotes is not great. Not great. It's like they, them, him, we, like nothing's that clear. And maybe that's by design. I don't know. But it says that we told him that I would probably be gone sooner. Doesn't say rather than later or anything else sooner. And then it says, it like kind of has some editorialism afterwards of like, they told Joyner that, you know, Barnes is going to be gone likely early in the tenure of him as the head men's basketball coach, and that he was comfortable with that, and that they did not tell Shepard that when he was hired, but have told him since. A lot of very vague timelines, a lot of very vague, we told him, we talked to them, without clear attribution. What do you think of that?
I think it's the actions of a man who was not planning on stepping down. I think it was pretty clear early on that Trent Bray was going to be out of a job at the very least at the end of the season. And he took it upon himself with a committee, so I'll give him that, with a committee to hire the next football coach. I think that's irresponsible. I think if you know that you're going to be not around for next football season, that you're essentially hiring a person that the next athletic director is stuck with, which seems irresponsible. And then,
or sticking now, Jamarcus Shepard, I mean, his future is staked now on whoever Oregon State brings in as the next athletic director.
Right. Right. Because like you said before, when we were talking before the episode, the new athletic director is going to want to bring in their own guys too. And the thing that I find most egregious was him firing Wayne Tinkle in the way that he did, which was bizarre to say the least, saying we're firing you with a handful of games left, but you can finish the season if you want. And knowing that he was going to make an announcement that he was stepping down less than a month later.
And bringing the search firm to the conference tournament game and having them sit right behind Wayne in the bench.
It just doesn't seem like that's somebody who's planning on stepping down. Like you would think that you would want to be hands off to a certain extent. Now, when you're firing a coach and hiring a new one, I guess you can't really be that hands off. But again, like, why would you fire a coach? And more importantly, why would you hire a coach if you know that you're going to be out in a handful of months? Like that, to me, that doesn't seem like somebody that left on their own accord. That seems like somebody who was given the option of, you either can leave on your own accord or you'll leave because we tell you to leave. That's the way I read it.
What changed?
I think it was the public.
Why did that happen?
I think it was the public pressure. I think that is, I mean, first of all, like, shout out to everyone that was vocal about this, that cared about it. I think that this situation in a lot of ways is bigger than just Oregon State sports, I think it shows that there is a crowdsourcing element of, if you stand up to something that you see as unjust about any entity that you care about, that sometimes being vocal about it and voicing your opinion about it works. And I think that there was...
And rooting it in fact, and pointing those facts out and showing that they are either illegitimate or there was some sort of corruption that was going on behind the scenes. Like, I think we all probably think that there was. That voicing that opinion works. And I think that's exactly what happened here. I think Murphy had a ton of pressure put on her to do something about this situation. I think she did do something about the situation. And I think she did it directly because of that public pressure. And that public pressure was not going away. If anything, it was getting louder. And, you know, like, people were starting to cancel season tickets. People that didn't have season tickets were definitely not buying season tickets, at least not in the numbers that they were before. So it was hurting the bottom line. But I just think, like, you can't go into a new era of football and a new era of men's basketball with two new coaches having this hanging over your head. And this wouldn't have been hanging over her head if the fans didn't be vocal about it. Like, I really think that there's a direct correlation there as to why he was let go. Yeah, I agree. I think, shout out again, everybody who kept beating the drum, kept it loud, and knew fact from opinion. Mm-hmm. Everyone has an opinion around this. Look, my opinion is Scott Barnes did a decent job until about 12 to 18 months ago.
Yeah.
And then got tired, gave up, stopped caring. And when you're only doing decent and you're going to lop off all those limbs, like, you've got nothing left. Like, you're barely contributing to society by that point. But we said this, I'm pulling it up now. We said this on episode 194.
Okay.
That's 12 episodes ago. This is the one released on Halloween. It's a quote from the episode, but it's also on the thumbnail of the episode. And it says, "This fan base isn't settling down anytime soon."
Yeah.
And I remember putting that up and being like, God, I hope so. I hope so. Mm-hmm. And that was before we had any records delivered, before we had put out any factual statements around potential mismanagement of the athletic department. But we could taste it. We could feel it. We felt it. We were in the same boat.
Yeah.
And that was October 1st, that the fan base isn't settling down anytime soon. Here we are nearly 5 months later, and it finally came to an head, and we've got an outcome, I guess, that most people were clamoring for, some a lot longer than October.
Yeah.
Many have been calling for this moment for years, and kudos to them to sticking to their guns.
Yeah. You know, I am a big Bob Marley fan, and he has a song called Small Axe. And in that song, it goes, "If you are a big tree, we are a small axe." And I think that has multiple connotations for our episode, because first of all, ChopEm. But second of all, I think that, you know, it's how are we as fans going to take out somebody from an organization that we care so much about when that organization's so powerful? Like, Oregon State Athletic Department is a powerful entity, and it took every single person that was vocal about it to take down that tall tree, right? And it was death by 1,000 cuts. And each one of those cuts was somebody speaking their mind about it. And it became one large voice. And I think that made all the world of difference. But let me ask you this, like, if you were to guess about what transpired with the Blueprint saga, would you say that Brent Blaylock was the mastermind behind it and that Scott Barnes allowed it to happen? Or do you think that Scott Barnes is culpable in more ways than just the fact that he allowed it to happen?
Both. But I'll explain why I say both. Both because I think it was, what do we do? Like, Kyle wants to shut down Damnation. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And Scott's sitting there going, Brent, you've done this before. Help me out. And Brent's probably like, got it. Of course, boss. I'll help.
Mm-hmm.
He goes, he makes one phone call to a contact he knows
Mm-hmm.
and has worked with previously, starts arranging things. And then not only does he talk to Rob Sign with Blueprint, but then he goes back to Barnes and gives his presentation of, this is the right partner. This is a good thing. I found us a solution. I mean, I think all of us that have careers have had moments where you're like, I'm just trying to make sure that my boss sees me as valuable.
Yeah.
That I am doing something, delivering something that's bigger and better than they even anticipated when they tasked me with this project.
Yep.
And like, I kind of think everyone stumbled into this thing.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I think that Brent made the call because that's who he knew.
Mm-hmm.
And it was easy to solve a problem that he was dealt by
Mm-hmm.
his boss, who was dealt that problem because of his impersonal communication skills.
Yeah.
Like, he couldn't maintain a good, trustworthy relationship with Kyle Bjornstad,
Mm-hmm.
and Kyle Bjornstad was ready to cut it all off.
Mm-hmm.
And he had other reasons because it's not going to work and it's not beneficial to Oregon State to have an NIL collective splitting the money that could be donated directly to Oregon State thanks to
Mm-hmm.
rev share. And so, like, I think it was just this whole, like, it got worse and worse and worse and worse moment until it flipped. And it flips when Barnes starts to go on the offensive to keep the deal alive. And that's the part where I think he starts protecting his ego. He starts
Mm-hmm.
protecting what he feels like is bought time, what he feels like is, sunk cost. Like, we've just spent this time. I don't have much time left. I don't have much opportunity left to like do something right. And now we're down to this moment, and Kyle wants to walk away from the agreement to sell the Blueprint, and Brent's the one who sold me on Blueprint early on, and I've been, laser focused on getting that done. Now I have to defend it because like it has to get done, right? Mm-hmm. It's like this obsession of being right and the ego that comes along with that. And I think that's what was his downfall. But I don't think that it was simply that moment. I think it was that perspective that he shifted into about every decision he was making within the department.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it was totally just ego led. It was just ego led from that point forward of, you can't fuck with me, right? Like, I'm Scott Barnes.
Yeah.
This is my deal, my department, and we're going to do what it takes to get it done. We're going to meet you halfway, give you money, meet you halfway, right? We're going to pressure you into doing it. I'm going to send everything I can at you to get this done. And then when it all comes crumbling down like a house of cards, I'm going to start throwing everybody else out under the bus but me.
Yeah. And what's frustrating is that type of mentality would have been great in the meetings with Blueprint, right? Having that ego in the meetings with Blueprint would have served him well, but it sounds like he wasn't involved. And instead he took that negotiation skills or lack thereof and directed it at the wrong person. And yeah, I mean, I think if he held the line and told Blueprint to go pound dirt when they offered the deal that they did, they almost certainly would have come back to the bargaining table like Kyle did.
Also, let's remember it was mid-July or June or something when mid-June when Kyle started having second thoughts. Mm-hmm. According to the records, he had messaged them essentially saying, not feeling comfortable with this. And they were like, we'll call you. Let's talk. Okay, we've talked, but hey, we still need to do this. And they were clearly in Omaha at that point when this was all going down. Like, that is June. Months later, as the negotiations are still going on between Oregon State and Blueprint and Oregon State and Kyle and Blueprint, he goes on record talking about not even planning to exceed the rev share cap. Which, again, collectives now are safety hatches for universities that will easily hit their rev share cap.
Yep.
Because you can still get more on top through a third party,
Yep.
which is a collective. But unless you're raising $20.5 million a year, you don't need to direct funds to a third party.
Yeah.
So he said that in like July.
Yeah.
That we don't anticipate being anywhere close to the ceiling. So
what are we doing?
What are we doing? Why did he press so hard on this?
Yeah.
Again, it was his ego. He was committed.
Yep.
He just had to get it done because it was a thing happening in his department that he was sold on and dug his heels into the ground to make sure it was completed.
Yeah.
There's so many things wrong with how Scott Barnes handled these last 6 to 9 months. There's so many things wrong. My records go back to about a little earlier than a year ago right now.
Mm-hmm.
And everything, even then, if you read between the lines, felt iffy. Kyle had, at this point, informed Oregon State that he was closing the collective by this point last year. So it wasn't like new in June. It wasn't new in July. Like he had already done this months before. They were already planning transitions for him to come in-house.
Mm-hmm.
And then it was just like bad decision after bad decision after bad decision, death by a million cuts. Then it was the ultimate bad decision in agreeing to the contract with Blueprint. Somewhere around there is when I guess Scott Barnes started to talk to Murphy about retiring, according to the Oregonian. At least the way the quotes that they're saying are truthful and shouldn't be challenged in any capacity. Just take it face value. And then Kyle resigns when the Sportico article comes out, or a couple days after. And then Blaylock is fired. Like, fuck, no, Blaylock wasn't fired. I'm not saying that. Don't sue me. He parted ways. But like, where was the coverage of this?
Yeah.
Through the whole thing.
Yeah.
Through the whole thing. I mean, I have stuff from a year ago that, look, if I was a journalist, if I was a reporter, if I worked for a media outlet beyond Belligerent Beavs Media LLC, if I worked for something like was paid, I guarantee you I would be FOIA-ing the shit out of everything to get any angle and any story.
Sure.
And to challenge anybody in a leadership position that fed me anything else than that was contrary to what they were talking about or doing behind the scenes. Like as a journalist, that's what you're supposed to do. Mm-hmm. So where was the coverage? Also, from today, Ryan Clark, the Oregonian. Hey, Ryan, just hello. I want to point out, one, I don't know if there's any podcasters at the Cayman Islands. I think you're safe. Two, we're not there yet. Three, he was the beat writer for Oregon State throughout most of this time up until about the flip to 2026. He was reassigned. At the time before that, it felt like he was working towards some story and then was reassigned. Well, I'm not going to go and you just take that as you'd like, but like that. I'm not going to go further. Anyways, he claims that this has been planned for months. James Crapia put in the article that this had been something in discussion since August. It seems to me that the Oregonian and all of the sports writers, editors, hello, Nick, they knew about this, I guess. They knew this was coming. At least they claim that. Yeah. So either you claim it and you own the fact you didn't report it to the public, that a public figure at a public institution under public scrutiny was planning to retire, was making this plan since August, and you didn't report it?
Yeah, it seems suspect, to say the least. Because I think it goes to the basis of journalism, right? Like, and I think that they're not the only one that does this, but whether it be like like professional blogs or journalistic companies, newspapers. I feel like people that cover sports, specifically college sports, have a tendency to be a mouthpiece for the university or team that they're covering. Not as much in professional, but in college, like, you rarely see negative coverage on a team unless there's a big scandal going on. And that's not really journalism, right? I mean, like, I don't want to completely shit on, especially Nick, but like, journalism is getting to the truth on what's going on. And this is a pretty big situation that was going on at Oregon State that no one seemed to take interest in. They apparently had a totally very relevant part of this story of Scott Barnes stepping down, which wasn't mentioned. So I think there's a fine line that you have to walk between not being a total, antagonist and reporting terribly on the entity that you're covering, and also not being a mouthpiece and basically an extension of the PR department for the entity that you're covering. And I see with the beat writers at the Oregonian that there has been a slow transition into being more of a mouthpiece for the university than reporting on the information that you have.
Especially if this whole challenging them.
Yeah, exactly.
And if you have information that's worth digging into further, challenge it.
Yep.
Put it in the faces of the people that you're supposed to be covering and say, explain this.
Yeah.
Explain this, or I'm going to have to infer an explanation myself, because the public deserves the story.
Yeah.
I think that is the forgotten aspect of this. They are not robots writing, bylines for game recaps.
Mm-hmm.
They are not like wire automation that just takes a press release and distills it down.
Yeah.
Like, they're journalists. They're reporters. Report on the ongoings, not the outcomes. That's the part that drives me nuts, is your job isn't just to recap games. Mm-hmm. It is not to just share quotes on news that is public already. Yeah. Quoting a press conference is not news.
Yeah.
Your job is to report on the inner ongoings of the institution you are assigned to cover.
Yeah.
And that was not done. And I'm not thumbing the blame entirely on the Oregonian, but they are the preemptive paper and media publication of the state of Oregon.
Yeah.
They are the ones that presumably have the most resources to dig in and cover this stuff and spend time, most resources comparably, but spend the time finding the information to make sure that everything is running as the public hopes it is.
Yeah.
And they did none of that. They did none of that.
And I think, and this is just my assumption, so I could be wrong, but it seems to me like they are afraid of losing their source. And I think having their source probably be Scott Barnes to a certain degree.
100%, yes.
If your source is the top dog, then you can assume that he knows what's going on. And if you don't want to upset your top source on the outset, understand why you wouldn't want to upset your top source. But on the flip side of that, find other
who do you work for?
Find other sources, right? If you have to either find other sources or file Freedom of Information Acts, or there are other ways to get the story other than just hearing it from the top dog.
Because at that point, you do become a mouthpiece.
You do become a mouthpiece.
Because
you're putting out what they say.
Yeah.
So, I don't know I don't know why. I don't know why they are doing it. That's just what my assumption is. And if that's the case, then we disappointed because I do have a lot of respect, especially for Nick. So,
Yep.
you know, like I said, maybe I'm wrong, but that seems like the most likely
See,
situation.
this is the way I assess everything. Is I wouldn't say that the Oregonian Nick, who otherwise sign on a dotted line and saying, whatever you say, boss, Mr. Barnes, I'll put it out.
Yeah.
You could trust me to just make sure the information you give me is going to go unchecked and pushed out to the masses.
Mhm.
I don't feel that is truthful. I do feel, though, it got to a point of Scott Barnes and the department were very, very secluded. And to get anything worthwhile, you had to work with him, not against him.
Yeah, you probably had the doors shut on you pretty quickly if you work against him. That's
he did
the,
that to
vibe
the
that I
coaches. Yeah. I mean, he did it to his own coaches. So
Right.
yeah, I'm
Yeah.
sure he did it to reporters.
Yep.
So yeah, cross the line, step on his toes, you're getting nothing.
Yep.
And I can see why you'd have to be like, you have to just make sure that when he gives me something that I vet it and put it out.
Yep.
But also that second part feels like it was lost.
Yeah.
It was like everyone took the easy route, right? Like everyone from Barnes to the media and onward took the easy route of, I'll give you what to say, you say it, everyone's happy. Done. That's easy. I don't have to investigate. I don't have to dig in. I don't have to question the things you're telling me. Maybe they question them, but I don't know how hard. Like I'm not gonna go measure effort here because that's not. I'm not in the room. I don't see it. I'm not on the phone. I'm not in the email threads. But this is the part where like it isn't something that I am saying to attack an individual. It is a systematic issue. It is an entity-wide issue, multi-entity-wide issue of Oregon State's athletic department went unchecked for so long and was given the benefit of the doubt that they were doing the right thing for Oregon State, the best thing to keep Oregon State where it was, deservedly where it was, or everybody, including us, thought the athletic department is serving that purpose. But if you are a reporter, you cannot just default. You cannot default to that feeling. You cannot just say, yep, I agree. Even if you're best friends with that person.
Yeah.
You are a reporter.
Yep. It's your job.
It is your job. I mean, I don't want to do this, but I'm going to do it. Ryan Clark posted 2 days ago, quote tweeted us about us saying this on our social media, that the local media should have been more aggressive during all of this turmoil, should have challenged Barnes, Murphy, everybody far more than it did. Because if you go back and go look at any article on Oregon Live that's published that says Scott Barnes, there's probably 50 in the last year. How many of them are challenging anything that he's done or not done? Maybe 3 or 4. Maybe. Maybe. It enabled him.
Yeah.
Murphy's enabled him. His own staff has enabled him. The media has enabled him. They gave him unchecked freedom to do whatever he wanted, which led us to where we got to. Anyways, posted this, and I didn't tag him. Actually, I really like Ryan Clark, and so this was a surprise to me. But he decided to defend it, even though he's not on the Oregon State beat now. And he said there's no disinformation campaign afoot where Scott Barnes thinks the Oregonian is his mouthpiece. Okay. An AD discussing media strategy is not an indication of some grand conspiracy. Come on, guys. Okay. But naming 2 reporters, that's still not a great look. There's a lot of reporters to talk to. There's a lot of people that can help, clear the air.
Yeah.
But that wasn't the way it was framed in the message, in the records, and that's not how it's being defended either. The existence of public record requests does not automatically make something a story. I do want to clarify this. If the Oregonian thinks that the fans and anybody, including myself, are upset that because we made a records request that we deserved coverage ourselves. That is absurd. That is absurd. I don't need their coverage. I don't care for their coverage. I don't need any coverage, honestly. The point was, you, Terry, others had questions. We wanted answers. Thanks to Ryan's editor, we figured out the path, or he told us the path to get those answers. So we did it. And those answers were went a lot deeper than I ever anticipated. Mm-hmm. So this isn't about woe is us, like, why aren't we getting coverage for the work we're doing? No, it is, we've uncovered things that you guys should have already had. Yeah. Like, shit, Oregon State should have known that Brett Blaylock had LLCs. They didn't even know that.
Yeah.
And then until they did an internal review and everything was okay. But like, Ryan Clark, I've filed many over the years which haven't risen to that level. It's part of the job. A private citizen drawing conclusions and a media outlet reporting the news are two different things. I didn't draw any conclusions, I guess. Maybe he didn't read anything that we've put out.
Everything was cited.
Everything was cited and factual and based purely on the records themselves. And then he goes on and on. He's like, investigative news stories require depth of evidence, blah, 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 blah. While publishing public records is great from an accountability standpoint, journalism, creates the line from A to B.
But that's what, I mean,
that's what we're saying they needed to do. And that's what we were trying to do.
Right.
So, other media outlets have seen these records. If they were enough to do a story about on their own, someone would have, okay, what, where, who, you're Oregonian, and we're Oregon State. Let's remember what kind of where things are in this current moment. And some have done stories about them, by the way. John Canzano had us on the show talking about them. Daniel Libet covered them and had us on an interview to cover what we were doing. Then this is like number 4 of his tweets of 7. But this is when he goes, for at Belligerent Beavs and others, didn't tag anyone else, just us, to insinuate we are neglecting our duties as journalists is flat wrong and shows a lack of understanding about our profession. But didn't say I understood their profession. Anyways, moving on to the next day, I did respond and said, you're right. It's about connecting the dots. I'm not a journalist. Here's 1,400 plus dots. Are these not worthy of coverage? Like, is there no story here? No response. Fine. I let it go. I didn't care. I don't really care. Ryan Clark is not somebody that I think about whatsoever. But then I find out today, as James Carpia, who also put a public records request into Oregon State, as we have found through our own public records requests, in requesting everything that I got from Oregon State without doing the work, without putting in the effort, without doing the waiting game, without paying anything that Oregon State fans had to pay out of pocket for.
Yeah.
Not the Oregonian that has a budget for these requests. Mm-hmm. And swoops in at the last moment, 70 minutes after I post that it's due, the final batch is due today. Now it's like, oh, good. Now let's go get those records. Also, that we had those records on our website available for free. So, like, you didn't even have to request it. If Nick wanted the records, or if James wanted the records, like, I'd just give them everything. I would give them the link to the box folder. Like, I'm not hiding anything. So I don't know what the purpose of this was, but naming me by name felt very personal and weird. And then also the fact that his own paper wasn't covering any of this the entire time until now it's almost done, and they're going to go, let's just see what he's got, or let's see where he's wrong. I don't know. Now it seems like they looked at it to go, let's see where he's wrong, based upon their attacks towards us and others that have defended our collective fan-based movement and research. Because don't forget, Bodie McBoatface did give us his records, which also helped provide a lot of color around some of the stuff that we had redacted or otherwise. Today was the day that Ryan Clark decided to double down after James Carpia broke the news that they had known since August, supposedly, or for months, I guess, to roughly paraphrase. Ryan Clark, it all went according to plan. Me and my co-conspirators at the newspaper covered for the OSU athletic director just so he could ... retire at the same time he'd planned to for months. Now, to escape to the Cayman Islands with all my millions, I hope there aren't podcasters there. Maybe not in the Cayman Islands. We are the #1 sports podcast in Japan.
We need to go to Japan.
Yeah.
Sure.
According to that guy who emailed us telling us that we were the #1 sports podcast in Japan, we are the #1 sports podcast in Japan. And I guarantee you that the Oregonian is definitely not the #1 newspaper in Japan. So eat shit, Ryan Clark. Eat shit, Oregonian. Also, Ryan Clark got really mad when my rebuttal, which didn't tag him or anything. I've never said anything to him except for the whole, like, here are all the records. I said, it all went according to plan. Me and my co-conspirators in Beaver Nation did someone else's job just so they could ... claim this was the plan all along. Now, to escape to the Cayman Islands. Hope there aren't newspapers there. Oh, well, JK, newspapers are dead.
He responded to you.
He blocked us.
Man, sometimes I miss Twitter. Sometimes I miss Twitter. I've just been posting mock-ups of sports franchises that don't exist.
We are living two different worlds right now.
Well, I'll tell you what, like, if anything, I hope it does get under their skin. And I hope that they hold the new athletic director to
a higher
account.
standard. Yeah.
Yeah. The other thing I hope, because really the new athletic director is obviously going to be well aware of this situation when they take the job or shortly after. They'll have two options, right, of what to do with this. Either one, they say what happened with the Blueprint deal can never happen again, and I need to be included in all of these big deals that are going on. I'm going to be the one that falls on the sword.
Every deal.
Yeah.
Every deal.
Or he's going to say,
or she,
do not put sensitive information in text form or email form. And they have we need to hop on a Teams call and we need to talk this through. Because one of those two things is going to happen. And I worry that it's the latter. And maybe that's just because I'm jaded. But you know what I mean? Like, I do think that there's an element of corruption in college sports. I mean, clearly there's an element of corruption in college sports. Take a look at what the Big Ten and the SEC are doing. But I think it's at a micro level too. I think you see it at institutions. And I mean, if you think it's going on at Oregon State, think about like an institution like Nebraska, right? That just runs the entire state of Nebraska. The athletic directors are really, really powerful and influential people that have the ability to say yes or no to deals that are worth millions of dollars.
As a public institution, many times donor or taxpayer dollars.
Yeah, right. So yeah, the door is open for corruption, right? And I think you have to get the right person in there that is going to show as much as they can through the interview process and through vetting that they are going to make the decision that's best for Oregon State, and they are not going to let the temptation of corruption seep into their head, because I know that the temptation's there, and that just can't be an option.
You let yourself float to that moment, right? Where you're like gradually realizing what people aren't going to bother you about, what they're not going to challenge you on. Mm-hmm. And I think that that's really how we got here. Murphy wasn't going to shine a light on Scott Barnes and say, what the fuck are you doing?
Yeah.
Because she needed him. Mm-hmm. I mean, again, what did she just say in November? Mm-hmm. About him? You just sent me the screenshot, right?
Yep.
It said, when I think about Scott and Scott's role, I don't know if there's anyone else who could have done what he's done these last couple of years. Fair. What I'm looking for is really the long haul. It's fine. We've got a season. We're in an enormous transition. We'll figure this out. The real focus is the long haul. He's the right guy for the right moment. Yeah. So maybe did that moment pass? Did something change, Madam President? Like what made it get to a point where clearly he felt that you were either wrong or you felt you were wrong? It's only one or the other.
Yeah.
It's only one or the other. So what changed? And if it was him, fine. If it was you, I really, really, really hope that you change your ways by the time we have a new athletic director and you hold them accountable for being successful in every facet of the operation that they run. Everything, top to bottom, marketing, communications, ticket sales, fundraising, branding, recruiting, field court, whatever success. Like every single thing has to be scrutinized. And you could do that in a productive way. Like the organizations, they're not universities, the organizations that are elite in anything football or basketball related operate that way from top to bottom, from president to intern. Everything has to be perfect. Otherwise, they make quick decisions to fix it and don't let people have a leash that is 10 miles long, longer than Highway 34. And I'm worried that is still a concern, no matter who steps in as AD.
Well, it's interesting, just sort of thinking out loud here. Like an athletic department is clearly set up like a business, right? You have the CEO, and then you have department heads, and that one of the department heads
now. You have a COO officially. That's what Brent Blaylock was. You do have CROs. I mean, Jackie Bruns is the CRO. Yeah, like that. This is an organization. This is a business.
Yep. And you have to find somebody that has the quality traits of a good CEO. And that means delegation and stepping in when you're delegating a task to somebody that's not going well. And I
remember when Scott Barnes said he needed Trent Bray to be more of a CEO type leader?
Yeah. Yeah. Take a look in the mirror.
Yeah. Way to model that for him, Scott. Good job.
But you almost think that, and I feel like I'm always just like thinking too much outside of the box because Oregon State's in such a bad situation right now, in a bad way. But you almost think like, find somebody who has been a CEO of a successful company, of a company that they took the role as CEO where they maybe weren't doing so well, and they implemented changes that turned it around, and they're a well-oiled machine. Like that's the type of person you need, more so than somebody who's like been a mediocre athletic director that's bounced around from place to place. Like you need someone
or was an associate athletic director at some other big school, but now wants his small-time shot, or was a big-time athletic director at a really small school that now wants his big chance. Like, I don't know where Oregon State goes here. I did float the name that I had been floated about Craig Robinson because I still feel like the boxes are checked there. Craig Robinson understands the landscape of college athletics. He is directly involved in everything that is going on when it comes to NIL and otherwise in rev share and all of the changing landscape. He is right there, front row seat. He's been in Corvallis, so he understands the challenges and the opportunities to sell to anybody, whether it's a recruit or a donor or a coach or more of the staff to have in the department. He knows how to sell Oregon State because he can talk directly about the ways he's experienced it. He's smart. He's an ex-athlete, and he's well-networked.
Yep, very well-networked.
Very well networked. I still want to see if there's something there. I don't think that there is. I think that there's a lot of people that just see any sort of relation to Michelle Obama, and they're like, nope,
Yeah.
no way. There's some that look at how the basketball program, pissed down their leg at the end of his tenure and were really bad. But like, we also had some of the best recruits ever come to Oregon State. We also had a practice facility built that no one thought was going to be possible. And no one in the athletic department wanted to help fundraise for, because they thought it was worthless, pointless, and that it was dollars being diverted from other causes that were more likely to be fully funded. And he got that done. And it's really one of the crown jewel facilities for pretty much all of Oregon State athletics. I'm not saying the crown jewel facility, but it's still up there in the upper echelon. It doesn't have to be Craig Robinson, but like, that is a person you need. That is the archetype of a person that you need to come in and do the job correctly. They don't have to have been anyone that's been in an athletic department. They don't have to have been even a CEO, but they have to have all the traits that would make them a great CEO.
Yeah. Yeah. Good business acumen, good understanding. Really, the most important thing, honestly, is knowing who the right people are for the right positions. Like, you're only as good as the people you surround yourself with. And if you surround yourself with good people, then delegating becomes a lot easier. And I think Brent Blaylock clearly was not the right person for the job. And ultimately,
so why was he hired?
Right. That's the biggest sin, right? That's the biggest sin out of all of this, was hiring Brent Blaylock to begin with, because he wasn't the right person for the right job. And either you didn't pick up on that, which a good athletic director or a good CEO would pick up on that, or you did know that and continued to delegate tasks, and you knew that this was a possibility. So one of those two things happened. Either one of them has me completely lose my faith in Scott Barnes. So you have to find someone who does know how to put the right people in the right positions. And that's going to ultimately lead to success, because the athletic director is obviously not going to be able to turn this thing around on their own. They need a support cast that is aligned with their vision and they're all on the same page of how they want to turn this around. That's what you need.
Do you feel like Murphy, I know they're doing a search firm, but a search firm, and I guess they're going to get a committee together. Look, I love the idea of a committee for all of these things, because collective thought, when you're not going to trust your own decision-making process, is valuable. And it is better than you just making a singular poor decision.
Yeah. Agreed.
But do you trust Murphy? I think let's look forward. Do you trust Murphy to lead the charge to find a not suitable replacement for Scott Barnes and a markedly improved replacement for Scott Barnes?
I think I do. And I think a couple of things. So her quote about Scott Barnes being the right person, the right time, or I'm paraphrasing, but I give her a pass on that, because you have to say that sort of stuff. You have to put perceived faith behind the person that you have in charge.
Wait. Really fast to challenge that. You don't have to answer it, but just to put it out there. Did she? It was November. He was already talking to her for at least 2 months by that point about retiring, and he had just fired his deputy athletic director. He had just agreed to a now blown up deal with a NIL business. He had just fired the head football coach that he hired, which I won't say was a bad hire, because I was excited about it, like most were, at least in that given moment. But all of those things are still fact. They all had just happened in like the last 3 weeks. And she came out and said that.
I think that, so first of all, I think this whole idea that he had planned his retirement is bogus. I don't think that that's true. I think that that's not true. So I think that her saying that, I'm taking that element out. If that is true, then it does you sort of do have to question that. But I think the other things, like, I think by Murthy saying that, she is not excusing him privately. She's and I don't even know if she's excusing it. She's throwing her support behind him. And I think that is something that you need to do if that person is still going to be around. You have one of two options, right? You either throw your support behind that person or you fire them. But I think saying anything poorly about Scott Barnes publicly would have been a bad look for Murthy. I think she let this situation probably play out a little bit too long. But I do think that she, at the end of the day, listened to the public. I think that she did listen to the public. Whether or not she's going to make the right decision, I don't know, because I don't know what she's looking for. I hope she thinks outside the box, but I would like to see her be a little bit more hands-on when things get out of control. And maybe she was behind the scenes, but it appeared like she gave Scott Barnes a long leash when maybe he didn't deserve one. But again, that's public facing. I don't know if he was given that same long leash privately. So I guess that's all to say. I don't know, because I don't know the behind the scenes way that she handled the situation. And I also don't know what she's looking for. She hasn't come out and publicly said, like, we're looking for a candidate that could do X, Y, and Z.
I think that President Murthy is a very, very smart, intelligent person. I don't know how much athletics knowledge she has. I'm not saying, does she know like where first base is or, you know, what a touchdown means. I'm talking like the business side of athletics. She could learn it really quick, or she might already know it and I'm the fool here. And that's fine with me. And I hope that's the case. But she does need to get up to speed and use her intelligence and her feistiness and her fire and her fight more for athletics. She's done a ton for the academic side of the university, but I would love to see that applied in parallel with a high energy, ready to go, ready to fight for everything athletic director, because I think that would be a tandem that would be scary to mess with.
Yeah. And that's probably another aspect, right? Is someone that President Murthy can work together with. Well, I hope that President Murthy is going into this thinking, sort of to your point, is maybe she doesn't know everything about college athletics. And maybe she doesn't understand the business of college athletics.
I think that's why she leaned on
way.
Scott.
Right. But what I hope, if that is the case, and that's making assumptions, is that she understands the core components of what it means or what it would take to be a good athletic director that can navigate the current landscape of college sports. And I think the Blueprint deal probably shed some light on the character traits and the business acumen that you need to have in order to be a good athletic director. So I don't think anyone's ever going to look at the Blueprint situation and say, oh, that's good that happened to Oregon State. But I think she can make it a positive in her own little way if she can use that situation, learn from the mistakes that Scott Barnes made and say, okay, well, like, because of that, we need somebody that knows how to navigate the waters of NIL or knows how to navigate the business side that would lend its hand to being able to navigate the waters of NIL.
Or multiple people. I think the AD position needs to be chopped up. Like you have to have somebody that's in operations, like I'm just making sure that all these schedules are aligned and that the game day facilities and crews are ready. And then you got somebody that's navigating like NIL and contracts directly with student athletes. And then you have somebody that's that like you've got one money in, one money out person, right? So the other person's only focused on, and a CEO or a COO. And then you really have to the GM is the money out person, and you have a chief revenue person. That's the AR person. But then you have the traditional AD position And that is somebody that is like, I'm just the operations. I'm just focused on everything running smoothly. I don't care about the financials. Like I'm not privy to them. I'm not worried about them. I'm not controlling them. I am just controlling the experience for the student athletes, the coaches, the staff, and the fans. And that's it. And I think that's where it has to go. But I think either way, whether it's 3 people, 4 people, 2 people, 1 person, somebody has to look at Murphy when they're in, this seat and say, I'm going to make you my protege about college athletics. Everything I know, you will know. And then everything I've taught you will make you probably smarter than I am at this landscape. I don't think Scott Barnes did that. I think Scott Barnes sat there and loved the idea that he was the only one with the knowledge. And I don't think he wanted to share it. And I don't think he wanted to get Murphy up to speed. I think it was a lot of, just trust me, I got this. Not like, let me show you what I'm thinking. Let me show you why this is the way I'm approaching this.
It was,
you learn.
Yeah, it was no collab. I mean, this is the way I'm reading it, which I think is the same as you, which is very little collaboration and a lot of trying to yank that chain further, right? Like trying to get a longer leash. But I think about it so like the company that I work for, we have a CEO who's really changed the company around, and he excels at being able to manage his people and put so he does a really good job of managing people managers. And it has become a very well-oiled machine where everyone understands what their role is. He has meetings with the department heads of catch me up to speed. What's going on? He's able to give his input of, hey, have you thought about doing it this way? But he knows everything that's going on because his department heads know everything that's going on in their department. And so he has a very full picture of what's happening in his organization without having to do the legwork himself. And really what that comes down to is he has found the right people to put in the right positions. He trusts them fully, allows them to do their jobs, but also has that final aspect of, I trust you that you're doing the right thing, but I need you to show me what you're doing.
Yeah.
And he's able to step in, and things move quick and they move fast, and we get answers right away because things are being pushed up the chain in the right way, and things are coming down the chain in the right way. Yeah. So like, that's who you need. That's the type of person you need, is a good manager of people managers. And you have to set up you almost have to gut not gut the departments, but like you have to gut the structure and reset up a structure that works for the person that's coming in. You have to give them that ability to do that.
You have to gut everything. You have to gut everything, not even internally, but externally. Look, not to bring it back to the Oregonian, but I'm going to say one more thing at least before we wrap. But like, I have been told, then this is from people, who know this space and have seen it all. The Oregonian and their reporters have been carrying Barnes's water for years. That is direct from a source. And that kind of enablement isn't something that is isolated. It is systematic. It is from the top to the bottom, to the sides, to the windows, to the walls. It doesn't matter. It is everywhere. Without a change of perspective or a change of personnel, achieving something where you can float ideas to the top that get vetted and brought back to the bottom, more precise and more honed in for success, then you're not really fixing anything. And I think the media has to step up. The president has to step up. The staff has to step up. And whoever is the next AD has to step in and lean in to being ready for that level of accountability coming from all of those angles, not locking themselves in their office, not getting an 0 for 14 vote of confidence from head coaches under their department, not getting puff pieces from the president that she says claims to have full support of them when clearly that changed tides very quickly. It needs a full revamp.
Yeah.
It needs a full revamp. It doesn't need a whole, turnover parade, but like everyone has to look in the mirror and go, did I contribute to it getting to this point? And if you did, change your ways. Right now, like, people are mad that we called this out. People are mad that fans are angry. And you have to realize you're the problem if you're angry about that.
Yeah. Yeah, that's true. That's true.
And I mean, we'll see if it gets to that, and if that's something that is in Oregon State's future. But I think if we want this like beautiful, like sunset-esque landscape of a future, like we need everybody to be on the same page.
Yeah.
I think the fans are on the same page. Civilians.
Oh, yeah.
Us civilians are on the same page.
That's right. You know what, though? And this will be the last thing I say before we wrap, is your comment about Craig Robb. I really like that thought, and maybe there's nothing here, but you had mentioned that we got some of the best recruits when he was the head coach. And he took over right after Jay John, which was a very tough position at the time, still is. And there's something there. He was able to get kids who probably wouldn't have chosen Oregon State if he wasn't there, and sold them on Oregon
Roberto
State.
Nelson.
Yeah.
The highest rated recruit to ever come to Oregon State in decades.
Right.
Maybe ever.
Right. And that's what you need. That is one of the main quality traits that you need in an AD. Someone who's able to sell the university to people who are probably overqualified to be at the university. You need to bring in the best recruits for the department head positions in the athletic department. You need to be a good recruiter. Like, that is probably the top trait that you need to be, is finding the right people to be in the right positions. And Craig Robb has done that. Now, is finding the right COO the same thing as finding the 4-star small forward, 4-star shooting guard? Maybe not. But there are quality traits that overlap there. And I think vision. That,
and you have belief in that.
You sold a vision. Right. So is Craig Robb the right person for the job? I don't know. But that trait in and of itself lends its hand to saying maybe. Maybe he is. So
something to consider. By the way, this is actually episode 204. I did pull that up. It's 204. Oh.
You had me sold. You're Craig Robb. You had me sold that it was 206.
And also 2 + 4 is 6, and 6 divided by 3 is 2, and 3, 2, 6, 2, 6. The day that we broke the shackles.
Wow.
Of Scott Barnes. This is Illuminati. Look at that. I got my eye in a triangle. I've never done that before, but it worked.
That's like a thing now. You made it a thing. It should be a thing.
Yeah, it is a thing. It is a thing. It's a podcaster's thing, Ryan.
It's a thing.
And it's all over the Cayman Islands. It's a huge trend. Good luck.
Cayman Islands, coming to an island near you.
Yep, we came in there and beat him to the punch and beat him to the story.
You
Not
have
sorry
him
about
so
that terrible
mad.
joke.
All right, should we wrap up?
Wrap it up.
All right. I don't remember what Terry says, but you can find us on Blue Sky or Red Note or Facebook. God, the list he says is long, but he's
MySpace,
Friendster. Yeah.
We're on Yelp.
He is.
You can review us on Yelp.
You can review us on Yelp, 5 stars only, please. He is JP Bertram, the Trill J. I am Ben Wehage, Benny L 1986. We are the Belligerent Beavs. Check us out. Buy our stuff at belligerentbeavs.com/merch. And always remember,
Read the Bard
no matter
files.
what
They're there.
Yeah, that's true. Read them. You don't have to request them. You can just read them right there. But we are the Belligerent Beavs. And remember, you can never spell ChopEm without hope. So chop 'em. Chop 'em.
Chop 'em.
And you did it. You fired Scott Barnes. Cut.